As much as fans don't want to admit it, the political battles happening before race weekends is as important, if not slightly more important, than races themselves, since the whole point of these exchanges is either to gain an upper hand over the other teams or call a team out for their cheating ways. And that is exactly what is happening as of late, with teams like Ferrari and Red Bull calling out the FIA's interim secretary, Shaila Ana-Rao, who has a history of working for Mercedes. So, what are the teams accusing Shaila of? What does she have to say? What do the teams have to say? And more importantly, what does Mercedes team boss Toto Wolff have to say too? Well, let's talk about it then. But before we get started, consider subscribing to the channel, as this will be the third week in a row that we've uploaded 5 videos in a week. I'm pretty sure no one is working as hard as us. Now, that's out of the way, let's get into it. Now, as we can all remember, the FIA's intervention with every team's car startup started after the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, where a good number of drivers, including Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes team boss Toto Wolff, called upon the FIA to do something about porpoising, as they felt it was starting to become an issue for their safety and not just a matter of gaining the competitive edge. And a week before that, Shaila Ana-Rao was appointed by the FIA as the interim Secretary General for Motorsport. While many fans and teams on the grid thought that the FIA and Rao would dismiss Mercedes' complaints, everyone would be surprised, especially Red Bull and Ferrari, as the FIA would give heed to their cries and announce that the governing body would come up with a technical directive that would address the phenomena and have every team start at an even playing field. This would raise a red flag, with Ferrari team boss Mattia Binotto saying, "She's a great person. She's got a lot of experience. She will certainly be capable of doing the job. I'm pretty sure on that. It's a concern, but only a concern. It's down to them to make sure that there will be no conflicts of interest at all, to behave properly." Rao would hear the chatter amongst the teams in the paddock, to which she would recently reply in a statement saying, "Before I worked for Mercedes, I was Director of Legal Affairs at the Federation." Rao told Italian outlet Corriere della Sera, "The world of F1 is like that. You go from one team to another. It is full of X's of something. Even F1 President Stefano Domenicali is ex-Ferrari. But I don't worry about certain rumors. I move on and continue to do what I have always done. Work." And now that regulations for next season are being decided, Rao is in a difficult position, as 6 teams are ready to challenge the proposed changes, as they're not happy and are doubting the legitimacy of the FIA's safety concerns. The teams that were said to be ready to challenge the new regulations are Ferrari, Red Bull, AlphaTauri, Alfa Romeo, Haas, and Williams, while the regulations in question are 1. The mandating of a 25mm raising of the floor edges. 2. The raising of the underfloor diffuser throat. 3. More stringent lateral floor deflection tests. 4. The use of a more accurate sensor to measure the bouncing/porpoising. These 4 regulations seem to have angered the teams who have not suffered as badly as others from the porpoising. The 6 teams mentioned earlier have been told by the FIA to wait on a more detailed proposal before they officially challenge the new rulings. Rao would defend the FIA's chosen regulations, saying, "At the moment, it is only a proposal and has not yet been finalized," she said. "And in any case, we work for the safety of the drivers. Always. What would happen if we did not intervene when safety is at stake?" This statement from Rao obviously struck a nerve on Red Bull's team boss, Christian Horner, who argued that the FIA meddling with every team setup is a dangerous route to go down. In his words, "Well, this is the problem, isn't it? Those regulations need to be black and white," Horner told The Race. "I think we end up with encyclopedias that sometimes are way too complicated, and there's no such thing as the intent of the regulations. It's a binary thing. I think the process is the thing to discuss as well, because a TD, technical directive, shouldn't be regulatory changes. There is a governance and a process for that. So I think we just need to talk through exactly why it is considered necessary." The Red Bull team boss would also comment on Rao's comments, saying that it was a matter of safety why the FIA had to intervene. I'd actually dispute it is a safety issue. It's down to a team how it chooses to operate its car. You can remove the porpoising very easily, but that's at the sacrifice of performance. Therefore, it's not the duty of the FIA to ensure a team is competitive. Otherwise, we'd have had engine BOP, balance of performance, over the last 10 years. Porpoising appears not to be as big a concern now as it was several races ago, peaking at the Azerbaijan Grand Prix on the second weekend in June. I didn't see any issues at the French Grand Prix, Horner told Motorsport.com. I think the last 3 or 4 races you really don't see any issues, so I think there just needs to be a common sense solution. Not rewriting the rulebook for next year at a point of the year with budget caps where they are, which is just too late. I think it's actually an even bigger issue for some of the smaller teams that quite simply wouldn't have the resources to be able to react. It's too late to redesign a car now for next year. If they are talking about a 25mm rise in the floor height, that's a completely different set of aerodynamics. I think something can be done, but I think whatever measure is taken, it just needs to be sensible. The numbers that have been discussed are just way too extreme compared to the reality of what probably could be done. Horner would also throw a slight dig at Mercedes, who he thinks is behind all of these new regulations, saying, I believe there is a strong influence to change many rules for next season so that some team could put their car down and benefit from this concept. There is an awful lot of lobbying, so a certain team can run its car lower and benefit from that concept. Obviously, Toto would reply by saying, I think he's just bored at the front. I don't know what he refers to, because at the end of the day, we are all part of the same circus. We work with the same stakeholders. Lobbying. Is he not lobbying? He sits in his office and he doesn't call anyone? And while most of the teams on the grid are absolutely furious at the FIA trying to do too much, Mercedes team boss Toto Wolff would be the exact opposite. The Austrian team boss would comment on another ongoing issue the FIA has to deal with, where a few teams were found literally and figuratively bending the rules regarding their flexible floors. The FIA has announced since its discovery that the teams who were found at fault to remodel their floors before the Belgian Grand Prix at the end of August. While many may see this as a fair punishment to give the teams at fault the benefit of the doubt, Wolff would see it otherwise, saying there was a regulatory change or like a technical directive to make clear what the FIA wishes to not see anymore at Spa, and is particularly on the skids. Wolff explained to Sky Sports at Paul Ricard about the current state of play on the directive. And then for next year, they're talking about what can be done in order to remove some of the questions around the floor or the plank, having a little bit of compliance. So yeah, it's still up in the air. I think it was a coincidence that the FIA spotted it in one of the races and made it very clear that this was not on. I think, first of all, there's no such thing as a magic bullet unless you speak of a double diffuser, so that's not going to make a big difference. They will need to run the car probably on the front a little bit higher than they used to be. That's one thing. I think this TD should have been brought into place once it was discovered 3 races ago, so the argument of, is it fair to broaden it into the middle of the season, is the wrong one. It should have been introduced when it was discovered because it's clearly much more than a loophole. And there you have it, guys. So, whose side are you on? Are you with Ferrari and Red Bull and see Rao catering to Mercedes too much for someone in her position? Or are you with Mercedes on this one? Let us know in the comments section below, and as always, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't.